The history of cars cannot be traced back from one specific person or one specific year. It was a process which was passed from one year to the other, from one engineer to the other. People like Kyle Benz, Henry Ford, Cugnot all participated in the perfection of a car. I believe it was Kyle Benz with his patent motor car. Some believe it was Henry Ford, some say it was Cugnot, but it doesn't matter. What we have today, the cars we have today, they all participated in that process. And since it was a process back then, it is still a process which is going on and on and on. And sometimes I find the products of that process, I mean the cars, boring. They are becoming more boring and boring and boring, like electronic hand brakes, the soft limiters. Like we used to have an old R8 which sounded like this. Now it sounds like this. And electronic hand brakes, they're sucking out the fun of a car, but it is what it is. People are setting regulations. Some of them are making cars boring, but they are saving the earth. So in those boring cars which are being produced in the process, there are some cars which are outstanding more than others. And today I'm going to talk about my 5 2020 best or favorite cars or favorite car moments, whatever you want to call them. On number 5, there's a car which I would like to call the resurrection of the year, if not of the century, which is none other than the Hummer EV. Well, to have a bit of a context here, let me go back into history. When Hummer started, it started as a military vehicle back in the 90s, and they were called Humvees. And in 1992, Arnold Schwarzenegger, that Terminator guy, he claims that he saw a convoy of Humvees rolling down the streets when he was shooting his movie, and he called AM General, which was the company responsible for the making of Humvees. So he called AM General. He told them, I need a Humvee, a roadworthy Humvee. And he was Arnold Schwarzenegger. By then, everyone was being inspired by him and stuff. So they made one for him. In 1992, he was the first ever person to drive a Hummer, which means he was the first Hummer customer or Hummer owner. Then from there, many celebrities started owning Hummers. They became more and more and more popular. I remember my first time when I saw a Hummer. It was around, I think in 2013. I saw a white Hummer back in Zimbabwe. It had South African number plates. The owner drove it from South Africa into Zimbabwe. So that was my first time to see a Hummer. I took pictures with it. As you can see, it was a popular car. So it became more popular and more popular. People wanted it, and owning one showed how rich you were. It gave you a class, a status, because it had drinking problems. It was so thirsty. It needed a lot of fuel to move for a short distance. So it was so expensive to drive. Fuel prices became high. So and it emitted a lot of carbon dioxide, and people started being concerned about the earth. So people started attacking anything that can pollute the earth, and one of those things was the Hummer. People started breaking the Hummers, writing random bad messages on any Hummer you could find on the streets. Some were even breaking the Hummers. So in 2010, General Motors, it was General Motors when it was cancelled because they bought the company from AM General. So in 2010, it was being owned by GM. GM called off the production of all Hummers after a series of Hummers like H1, H2, H3, which were popular. And 10 years later, in 2020, they reviewed their EV truck, the Hummer EV, which stands for electric vehicle. Electric vehicles, they're becoming popular and more popular and more popular, and In the future, I think we're going to do away with engines. Cars are going to be electric. Every car is going to be electric. As we can see now, even trucks are being made electric, like the Rivian. There's a Ford F-150 which is coming. There's a Cybertruck, the Tesla Cybertruck, which is also electric. Then we have this one, the Hummer EV, which I'm talking about. And since the first time I saw a Hummer, I didn't believe that I would say these words about a Hummer. Electric, something which doesn't use fuel, and how fast GM is claiming that their new model, their new Hummer EV is going to be. Like, it used to be thirsty and not fuel efficient, but now it's going electric. And I think that's a bold move GM has ever made. Like, it's a car which went out of production due to protests from people and customers, and it was not efficient, but it was popular, so they had to cut the production. And 10 years later, they have revived the brand, and not just the brand, but they have dodged the engine and made it electric. So I think that's one of the best resurrection I have seen in 2020, like the Hummer EV, which is going to do more than 1000 horsepower as GM claims, and it's going to do 0 to 60 in less than or in 3 seconds. Those are some of the words I didn't believe I would ever say about the Hummer, which used to be shaped like a brick. The aerodynamics was so poor, so it was slow, yet not efficient. But now it's a car which is electric, which does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, which is more than 1000 horsepower, and it's good looking for me. I like it, to be honest. I like it more than the Cybertruck. Everyone knows about the Cybertruck, but the EV, as far as electric trucks are concerned, the Hummer EV is my favorite. I would like to see the Rivian. How are they going to make their truck? But the EV, this is on number 5 of my favorite moments, of my favorite car moments of 2020. On number 4, we have the first ever 4-seater hypercar. Yeah, a hypercar which can accommodate 4 passengers. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 passengers in a hypercar. So practical. You can fit bags in there. It's practical. Like, hypercars are not known of being practical and accommodate many passengers. No, but this one is the first ever of its kind. It's none other than the Koenigsegg Gemera or Gemera or Gemera, whatever you want to pronounce it. So let's talk the Gemera now. Koenigsegg is the company which gave us the Jesko, one of my favorite cars. It's a good looking car, Jesko, but the Gemera, totally different thing, totally different story. It's not a good looking car at all. I don't like how it looks, to be honest. It's not handsome, it's not beautiful, it's not sexy as far as I'm concerned. It's not a beautiful car out there. But how it broke the ground of a 4-seater hypercar, it finds its place in my top 5 cars of 2020. It's a car which has got 1700 horsepower. That's too much for a car. That's way too much. Yes, it's a hypercar, but 1700 horsepower. You can give each member of the Unsullied and the Dothraki army a horse from the Gemera horsepower, and that's too much. Way too much. And let's talk about what's producing those 1700 horsepower. It's a 3-cylinder engine. Yeah, 3-cylinder engine, turbocharged 2-liter engine, but it's not producing all the horsepowers alone. it's producing 600. The engine alone is producing 600 horsepower. Then it has got 3 electric motors which produces 1100 horsepower. Combine the horsepower, the engines, and the electric motors, it all adds up to 1700 horsepower. You can drive your family in your hypercar, a first ever hypercar which can accommodate 4 people. It was reviewed, I think, when lockdown started around April 2020. That's where I first saw its review on internet, and I liked how they reviewed it. Like, you don't need to push forward the front seats to access the back seats. You just open the large suicide door they put on that camera, then you can easily access the back seats. For me, that's an invention for me. Like, I don't like to push a seat forward to access the rear seats. Like, it's not practical, and the leg room, obvious, it will be poor the moment you push forward, because you don't have the B pillar, but not on the Gemera. That's why it's one of my favorite cars of 2020. Let's move on to number 3. On number 3, there's a car which made me to love cars. That's the car I first knew. The car my dad owned when I was born, the Land Rover Defender. He had the 1960s model, the one which had a spare tire mounted on the bonnet or on the hood, whatever you call it, a hood or on the bonnet. The spare tire was mounted on top there. So that was the one he had growing up, and it was army green in color. I loved that car. When he sold it, I remember I couldn't eat. I think I was around 5-6 years there, because I used to make it using wires, like copy it using wires, like making a wire car Defender. Then he sold it there, and he bought a 1980s version. That one, it was better looking, it was more modern, it had the comfortable seats, and we used to drive that to our farm. So it was the car which meant something to me, and still it means something to me. It's one of the car I would like to buy whenever I get the chance, or whenever I get the money. When Land Rover announced that they are going to make a new model of the Defender, to be honest, I didn't support the idea. I thought they're going to mess up the design of the Defender, the reputation of the Defender. Like, it has got a lot of following, huge followers, the Defender. So I had fear that they're going to mess up everything, as they did with the Range Rover Sport, and they have a history of messing up to their new models. So as for the Defender, it was the only thing they had left with. They didn't mess up so far. So when they announced that they're going to redesign the Defender, I personally didn't support it. But this all changed in 2020, when I saw a new 2020 Defender in person. I actually touched it. I spent about 30-40 minutes going around the car, checking the lines, the folds, the what. It's a good looking car. My perspective toward the new Defender, it changed the moment I saw it in person. Then the second time I saw it, I was in Joburg. It was in a Land Rover dealership. Still, it looked good. I liked it so much. I've put this car because I saw it in 2020. You might have seen it earlier in 2019 or whatever, but I saw it in 2020, and everything changed. I actually am a fan of a new Defender right now, because the old one, I was one of the guys who would be like, yeah, I'm going to stick with the old Defender, the new one, they're going to mess it and stuff. But now it's different. If you are a Land Rover Defender fan also out there who thinks they've messed up the Defender, wait until you see the new Defender. It's actually very good looking. I think they have made a superb job, and I would like to own one, but the 110 version, not the 91. I haven't seen the 90, so I can't say I would like to own it. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen the 110. I like it, to be honest. So number 3, the Land Rover Defender. As I have said earlier, cars are becoming more and more and more boring, which means I would prefer back to go back in the times when cars were still using manual gearboxes, we're still using manual handbrakes, we're still using cranking cranking what do you call this, cranking, the ones which you cranked to roll up and down the windows. I would go back there. That's why the 60s are my favorite years as far as cars are concerned. The 60s gave us the best cars ever, followed by the 2000s. So let's go to number 2. Number 2 is the car which was born in 1964. 1964, which is one of my best car years. It's in the 60s range, so it's one of my best car years. It was a car which was born in 1964, then it was redesigned in 2020 as the 2021 model. It's none other than the Volvo Cyan or Cyan Cyan P1800. The Cyan P1800 Volvo. It was redesigned in 2020. They kept its looks from 1964, but added 2020, like the 21st century touch, like the engine. From their World Touring winning car, the S60 TC1, 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, which makes about 400 horsepower and at 6,000 RPM. So they took that engine, they put it in the P1800 Cyan, which they redesigned in 2020, but they kept the same looks from 1960s, which I like about this car. Many car manufacturers are going this direction, the same direction. They're going futuristic, they're going electric, they're going this and that, they're going which way, they're going the same direction. But the Cyan, it's not an official car from Volvo though, but since Cyan, it's like Volvo's own Brabus, Volvo's own Luma class, they took the 1964 P1800 and went the other direction. They kept the same looks the P1800 had in 1964. Then they put a new transmission, a new engine, more powerful engine. They reduced the weight of the car. It's less than 1 ton actually for a 400 horsepower. For a 400 horsepower engine, less than 1 ton. That's too much as far as power to weight ratio is concerned. So the uniqueness Cyan did with the P1800 makes it one of my favorite. I will never forget this car ever. In 2020, the 21st century car, which is the 60s touch. When everyone else is going futuristic, everyone else is going electric, they took the 60s car, they kept the looks, the old looks, the vintage looks, reduced the weight to 990 kgs. That's what I would like to see, like, in the future. Not these futuristic cars which are so quiet. I don't like where we are going with cars, to be honest. That's me. I don't feel it. So the Zion P1800, my favorite car, my second favorite car of 2020, which leaves number one. Let's go to number one. My number one car, it's not the Mercedes-Benz GT Black Series. I expected them to make a GT Black Series in the future. They did that, so for me it wasn't a surprise. It's not on my list. I expected them to do that. The Ferrari, what those guys, I expect them to do whatever they are doing, so they will never find a space on this list, my 2020 list. Maybe in the future, but not for this last year. So my number one car of 2020, it's a car which comes from Japan. It's a hatchback. I always have a soft heart about hatchbacks. Like my favorite hatchbacks being the Renault Clio V6, the Mark 7.5 and the Mark 8 GTI, the MPS Mazda 3, the A45 Mercedes-Benz RS3, the Ford ST. Like, I have a lot of favorite hatchbacks, but this one happens to be one of my favorite, if not it's actually my favorite at the moment. My favorite hatchback, it's none other than the Toyota Yaris Gazoo Racing 2020 model hatchback. It uses a 3-cylinder 1.6 liter engine which produces about 261 horsepower and 360 newton meters of torque. And the numbers don't stop there. Let's go on and tell me if it's not the best hatchback or the best car of 2020. It also has 4-wheel drive. Yeah, it's a GR4 Gazoo Racing 4-wheel drive. It's all four wheels. They do some work. Pull and push with all 4-wheel drives. Only a hatchback, such a small hatchback with 4 wheels, which are doing the work. It's a permanent all-wheel drive. You can't make it use two-wheel drive, two front or two back separately. It uses 4-wheel drives throughout, but it sends 60% power to the front and 40 to the rear. But if you want to change it, you can. If you want to change the ratio, no problem. You can put it in sport mode and it sends 70% to the back, then 30% to the front. That if that's not good enough, you can put it in track mode, and it distributes the power 50-50, so you can do whatever you want with it, 70-30, 60-40 or 50-50 on a hatchback like a Toyota. We all know how reliable a Toyota is, and it's not just a Toyota, it's a Gazoo Racing, and it's very cheap. They're going to make about 25,000 for the entire world, and they're going to be cheap. And it's a manual transmission. It uses a manual transmission, manual handbrake, which means you can do this with it. A circuit pack, it's like a feature you can get. It's an optional feature you can get on your Yaris. You get differentials, the front and rear limited slip differentials, and bigger brakes, bigger than those on the Supra, the famous 2020 Supra, the one I reviewed earlier. You can check my other video. The brakes on the Yaris is actually bigger than those ones if you get the circuit pack option, with slip differentials, 4-wheel drive, a manual transmission, two-way 4-wheel drive, 2-door rally racing car, which you can drive with a 1.6 liter engine, which means you can use it as a daily driver. At the same time, you can go racing with it. It's a multi-purpose small car. That's why I like it. Besides being a Toyota, it can be used as a daily driver. You can use it as a racing car. You can use it as a showing off car. So those are the top 5 cars of 2020. My top 5 cars of 2020.